The Soviet Union waged a 4-year war with Germany and won. It was May 1945, when the Soviet Union started to send their troops one after another to the border with Manchuria. Preparations were underway for declaring war on Japan. Okinawa became the last battlefield for the Allied forces. In June, the US forces gained victory over Japan. The Okinawa border guards were completely defeated by the overwhelming power of US forces. On August 6, 1945, the bomber Enola Gay left Tinian Island and dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Out of one war was born another. The Cold War between Western and Eastern blocs backed by nuclear weapons nurtured the seeds of repeated bitter conflicts. Distrust of each other was amplified in both blocs, and the building up of armaments continued. In 1989, a summit was held between the two bloc leaders in Malta in the Mediterranean Sea. It took 44 years for the leaders to declare, deep in the Sea of Malta, the Cold War has sunk. But the tragedy of the Cold War was not only limited to bloody battles. Let's look back to Anchorage Airport on August 31st, 1983. Korean Airlines Flight 007, bound for Seoul from New York, finished refueling and proceeded for takeoff. It was an ordinary scene, repeated every 6 minutes at Anchorage Airport, where there were 230 landings and takeoffs a day. At 4 o'clock in the morning, local time, CAL Flight 007, with 269 passengers and crew, left Anchorage on schedule for Seoul. The flight path of Flight 007 was Romeo 20. It was a course bound for Seoul south along the Kuril Islands and flying over Sendai, Japan. The aircraft was programmed to fly the specified route using a state-of-the-art autopilot system. But Flight 007 deviated from its scheduled course for reasons unknown and headed not south, but north. Kamchatka Peninsula harboring the Bering Sea. This was the forefront of the harsh conflict between America and the Soviet Union, as well as the Cold War between the West and the East. A radar network of minutely woven mesh catches the shadow of Flight 007 invading territorial skies. A military airbase in Sakhalin gave the command for interceptors to take off. Flight 007 continued heading north. As a Soviet fighter intercepted the doomed passenger plane, exchanges were being secretly monitored by Japan's self-defense force. It was 3:38 a.m. on September the 1st, 1983, Japan time, when the final bleep of Flight 007 disappeared from the radar screen. Contact with the 269 passengers and crew was lost forever. Moscow in the early winter, 1991. The faces of the people liberated from the dictatorship of the Communist Party seemed relaxed. But in contrast to the magnificence of the freedom gained, the Soviet economy was in chaos, with a chronic insufficiency of food. The Soviet Union was in a turmoil where freedom and restraint lived together. Perestroika and glasnost have allowed the case of the shooting down of the KAL jet once again to surface from the dark grave of the Soviet Union's history. One lead was the fighter pilot who shot down the ill-fated jet. The failure of the coup d'etat attempted by the Conservatives made the flow of democracy even stronger. The Izvestia newspaper carried an article on ex-Lieutenant Colonel Osipovich and began to investigate the true account of the shot-down KAL jet. The article had previously been issued by the government. It took 30 hours from Moscow by train to reach the home of the man responsible for the shooting in southern Russia, the Caucasus Mountains. In Maikop, a town with a population of 160,000, Gennady Osipovich, ex-lieutenant colonel and former pilot, now lives quietly with his wife in retirement.
Cameraman, forward, yes.
Тут разуетесь, что вы там разуваете?
Не надо, там не развивайтесь.
He showed his military uniform, which he said he kept with great care and pride. There was a decoration in recognition of brilliant service in the shooting down of the KAL jet. The exchange between Lieutenant Colonel Osipovich and the airbase, which had been monitored by Japan's self-defense force, is as clear as yesterday in his memory.
Пуск произвел. Цель уничтожена. Начал пристраиваться там, устраиваться все в кабине. И тут сразу мне воздух команду дали. И дали высоту, набрать высоту 8,5 тысяч. Ну, это обычно у нас, мы туда и летаем. Или в сторону Курил нас гонят. Там, значит, получается, на юго-восток. А это на северо-восток. Но я думаю, может быть, контрольная цель. Обычно ночью контрольные цели запускают, чтобы проверить всю систему.
The territorial skies of Sakhalin Island, where Flight 007 intruded, the front line of the conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union.
I ordered the shooting 30 or 40 seconds after Osipovich launched missiles. What I mean is after he shot down the target, the official order came from the Far East commanding officer.
Сахалин очень узкий. Я и говорю, что делать, он уходит. Ну, тут мне сказали сбить его. Самолет, цель уничтожить.
Sokol Air Defense Base in Sakhalin Island, the front line of the Soviet Union Far East Defense Corps, is the airbase from which Lieutenant Colonel Osipovich took off 9 years ago to intercept the Korean jumbo. This airbase was a top-class military secret during the Cold War. Any outsider's approach was strictly rejected. The requests for permission to film were repeated to the Soviet Minister of Defense and finally accepted. The gate of this airbase was the first ever opened. It had been tightly closed, not only to foreign journalists, but also to local reporters. Now, with an end to the Cold War, tension of previous years could not be felt. The fact that this is the front line of defense has not changed. There are many military helicopters here, and the main fighter aircraft, MiG-31s. There was not a single day went by without a scramble of interceptors from here at the time of the KAL 007 shootdown.
In spring of the same year, a U.S. task force took part in exercises off Korean Island. Many U.S. jets entered our skies. We were grounded by fog, but some of the commanders of our defense unit were fired because we didn't take off.
There was an incident in 1987, 4 years after the KAL 007 shootdown. A Cessna airplane, piloted by a young West German, landed easily in Red Square in Moscow in broad daylight. It exposed the weakness of the Soviet Union air defense system.
Был сначала осужден военным трибуналом.
А что все-таки инкриминировали? Халатность?
Нарушение правил несения боевого дежурства. Причем с тяжкими последствиями.
Он познал, что он именно спортивный самолет, что он не военный самолет. Вот, поэтому такой мысли у меня даже и не было, что вот уничтожать его там или как там.
Air defense is the key to defending a nation. At this air defense base, a painting which records the moment of the shootdown is still on display. Shootings are just part of a brilliant military history.